Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council meeting of May 12, 2015. I'd like to thank the Garden Club for the floral arrangement they always provide for our meetings. Roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Here.
Mayor Ruane.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Here.
Tom Moore, would you lead us in the pledge, please? To the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a few announcements this evening. First of all, the 75th Annual Posey Parade will take place on Sunday, June 7, 2015, at 1 p.m., beginning on San Mateo Avenue and coming all the way to the park. It's going to be expanded this year, and that City Parkway will be closed. They have a car show and lots of different special events, so please plan to attend. Also, the same day from 8:30 to 11:30, the fire department at the main station in El Camino is having their pancake breakfast. It's a fundraiser for their, I believe, their burn foundation and some other things that they raise the money for. So that'll be a good thing. It's a lot of fun. Before you watch the parade, you can load up on pancakes and enjoy. So the Barrier's 21st Annual Bike to Work Day will be on Thursday, May 14th, 2015. I know our own bicycle and pedestrian group will have some bicycle stations in and around San Bruno, so you can look at the website and see where those are going to be. And finally, the San Bruno Community Foundation is initiating community outreach to gather input on the community needs and interest. This is in regards to the $70 million of restitution that was received by PG&E after the explosion in 2010. The foundation is hosting town hall meetings on May 28th at Bel Air School and June 3rd at the San Bruno Senior Center beginning at 6:30 p.m. And we ask everybody to please attend. We had the first one last night at Cappuccino. There were a little over 100 people there, and it went very, very well. Also, I'd like to announce that there is an online survey. If you can't attend in person, please fill it out online. And there's a written survey available at City Hall and the library and the Senior Center and the Rec Center. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunity to put your 2 cents in on what you'd like to see San Bruno do with this money going forward. The foundation is really trying to outreach to everyone, as we always promised from day one. Presentations this evening, we're going to present a proclamation declaring May 17th to the 23rd as Public Works Week in San Bruno. And I'd like to read this. The City Council of the City of San Bruno, State of California, whereas public works services are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of citizens is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as waters, sewers, streets, storm drainage, and whereas our community's health, safety, comfort, and quality of life greatly depends on these facilities and services, and whereas the efficiency of qualified and dedicated personnel who staff the City of San Bruno Public Services Department is influenced by the citizens' attitude and understanding of the work they perform, and whereas this year's theme, Community Begins Here, speaks to the essential nature of public works services in support of everyday quality of life in San Bruno. Now, therefore, I, Jim Ruane, Mayor of the City of San Bruno, proclaim May 17th to the 23rd, 2015, as Public Works Week in San Bruno, and call upon our citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works to the community and to recognize the contributions that our public services officials and staff make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. And I want to present this to Jim Birch. Would you present this, Michael? Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for this proclamation on behalf of the entire Public Services team, a team that I feel privileged and very honored to be a part of, a group of dedicated men and women who work every day very hard to deliver the critical services and programs that our residents, our community, and our visitors to the community count on. The Public Services staff take this year's theme, Community Begins Here, and we put it into action every day. We do so with the support of all the departments within the city: finance, utility billing, the city manager's office, and like to thank not only all the departments that support what we do every day, but also the council for your direction and your support as well. I'd like to invite everyone to our open house at the Courtyard to learn more about what we do and the programs that we have on Thursday the 21st from 11 to 2. I've got some flyers in the back. We'll have equipment on display. Last year we had a couple of classes from, I believe, St. Robert's that came down. It was great. We haven't gotten confirmation from a couple of schools that we've invited or that we've spoken to. But everyone's welcome to come down. We're going to have hot dogs and lots of information about streetlights and water conservation, sewer laterals, and again, you can look at some of the equipment and look at some of the demonstrations we have. So I would invite everybody to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and thank the staff, please, for us. Our next presentation is we're going to present a proclamation declaring May 10th to the 16th as National Police Week in San Bruno. City Council of the City of San Bruno, State of California, whereas our community's public welfare and safety is greatly dependent upon our law enforcement officers, and whereas President John F. Kennedy first designated May 15th as Peace Officer Memorial Day in 1961 and declared that week National Police Week in recognition of the men and women who stand guard to protect the people of the United States through law enforcement. And whereas we honor these men and women of law enforcement who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community, and we pay our respects to the survivors of these fallen officers. And whereas the members of the San Bruno Police Department play an essential role in protecting the rights and freedoms of the citizens of San Bruno by safeguarding life and property, by protecting our citizens against violence, disorder, and deception. And whereas the men and women of the San Bruno Police Department and all law enforcement officers increasingly provide a vital public service despite the risks and hazards faced. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Jim Ruane, Mayor of the City of San Bruno, hereby proclaim the week of May 10th through May 16th, 2015, as National Police Week, and I encourage all residents to join me in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who have dedicated their service to their community by preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Rika, would you deliver this for me, please? Yes, sir.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, I, like the Public Works or Public Services Director, would like to thank you for your recognition on behalf of the men and women of the San Bruno Police Department. We can't thank you enough for the support. During my short time here, one of the true pleasures has been the relationship and the support the police department enjoys with not only the council and city staff, but with the public as well. It's truly made my short time here a pleasurable one. I'd also like to remind everyone of Police Week or Police Day at Tan Fran Mall, scheduled for this Saturday the 16th, from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. This is the 33rd year that San Bruno will be hosting this event, and we have law enforcement agencies from all over the Bay Area coming to participate. There'll be 2 K-9 demonstrations, which is always popular at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m., so please come on down and see what we do. The Citizens Crime Prevention Committee will have a booth there as well, so folks can learn how to get involved. So thank you very much. We appreciate the recognition. It's not necessary, but it's very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations to all of our officers.
Thank you.
Now, item C, don't go too far away, Chief. We're going to receive a presentation from Police Chief Barberini on fraud awareness and prevention.
Good evening again, and thank you for having me. Over the course of the last few years, the City of San Bruno, along with communities throughout the state and the country, have experienced a dramatic increase in attempts at fraud. These types of fraud have come in many forms, including via telephone and via email. These types of crimes sometimes look to prey on specific groups, but are often do not discriminate and are random. Many of us have experienced these types of calls or emails. And our goal from a law enforcement perspective is to prevent victimization, because it's very hard to address on the back end. Examples of these types of scams that we like to refer to them as include the PG&E scam. which is primarily aimed at small businesses, or often aimed at small businesses. And the target, or the individual targets a small business and represents themselves as an agent or representative from PG&E, and advises that the business is late on their electric or gas bill. It also advises that their power will be shut off that same day if they do not somehow pay the balance of their account. The victim is then instructed to purchase a money transfer card that would cover the cost of the bill, and sometimes asked to meet an individual or to contact an unknown individual via telephone or wiring money via the phone card. The IRS scam is very similar to the PG&E scam, but primarily aimed at individuals. The suspect in this case identifies himself as some type of agent for the IRS and advises the victim that they're delinquent in their taxes, and the suspect often threatens arrest or additional fines if this outstanding tax balance isn't paid. There are also some rather intrusive questions asked with this type of call, including one's social security number or other personal information. The victim again is then instructed to purchase a money transfer card that would cover the cost of the tax bill, and asked to somehow forward or wire that money to pay off the account. Another scam is we commonly refer to as the grandchild scam. This is a crime that's sometimes aimed at seniors. The suspect will pose as a grandchild or distant relative and claim to have been arrested in a foreign country and request money for bail. This one is very common via email. The suspect asks the grandparent or relative not to contact the individual's parents for fear of causing family trouble or getting into more trouble, and then once again request that the victim in this case purchase some type of money card in order to wire or transfer funds in order to pay the bail. An additional scam is the prize distribution scam. A suspect calls to advise a victim that they are entitled to a large cash prize or other item as a result of some type of drawing, lottery, or inheritance. Again, this is commonly seen via email. The victim is then instructed to purchase a money card, as mentioned before, to facilitate the transfer of funds from an overseas account. The fake bank alert message is a fraudulent message, often via telephone, from an individual's bank that states that a debit or credit card is being suspended. It instructs the victim to call a toll-free number that is not affiliated with the bank. The victim is then asked to verify account information, including name, date of birth, social security number, address, credit card number, etc. Once this information is obtained, it can be used to commit a variety of crimes, including identity theft, charging existing purchases to an open account of the victim, or creating new accounts, including credit card, checking, savings accounts, fraudulent checks, or even obtaining a fraudulent loan. And finally, the get-rich-quick scam would lure would-be entrepreneurs or people looking to engage in home-based employment under the pretense of a false promise by promising large earnings with very little effort. The schemes often require an initial investment that involves selling items on eBay or making sales calls. However, once the payment is sent to the companies as part of your initial investment, these companies often disappear. Most of these scams use a relatively new form of wiring money from victims to suspects. And this makes it almost impossible to track, which is a challenge for us. The money wiring services uses money cards. Some of the brand names of these are Green Dot or Money Pack. They can be purchased at your local convenience store and are used to send money either electronically or via telephone. Once the cards are loaded at the register of a store with a particular amount of cash, the victim can then provide an account number and a password number to anyone, and money can be withdrawn from this card almost anonymously. In addition to that challenge, apps now can be purchased via the cell phone to disguise a telephone number and often display some innocent third party's telephone number as the number that you're receiving the call from, which allows those involved in this type of criminal activity to avoid detection. Some examples of language you'll see in some of these scams is, as mentioned earlier, the IRS or somebody from the Treasury Department who mentions arrest or threatens arrest. is without fail a scam. A relatively new one is a call from the county saying that you failed to report to jury duty and you'll be arrested unless you pay a fine. Those calls just don't come from the county. And then, as mentioned before, this is your grandson. I'm on vacation in a foreign country and I've been arrested. And then finally, the common denominator, purchase a green dot card or money pack card or other type of money card, are all red flags that folks should look out for when receiving these types of calls. So what can folks do to protect themselves from these types of crimes? Here's our little bit of advice, and me on my soapbox here to try to prevent folks from finding themselves in these difficult situations. Always be suspicious, especially when somebody's asking you to wire or send money via telephone. If it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. And remember that no legitimate business or government agency will ever ask you to pay a fine or a fee using a prepaid card purchased at a convenience store. Always ask for a callback number or seek a callback number on your own, especially if you're getting calls from a business such as PG&E or someone representing themselves from a business. There's a phone number on your PG&E bill. There's a phone number on the website. It's very easy to verify whether or not this is a legitimate caller. So don't be afraid to ask for a callback number, ask who you're speaking with, and see if you can verify their information before providing any personal information, especially via telephone. And finally, when in doubt, call the police department. I'll talk a little bit about enforcement in a second, but if the hair stands up on the back of your neck or something just doesn't seem right, don't hesitate to call the police department. We can give you advice over the phone, or we can come out and talk to you about the call that you received. The reporting of fraud is a difficult and challenging one for law enforcement. There are two websites, actually three websites up on the screen there, that we use to report fraud, and individuals can report fraud as well. These types of crimes that I've discussed throughout this and many more attempts at fraud are usually or primarily investigated at the federal level. These calls are often made from out of state or overseas. It's not feasible for local agencies to investigate these calls on an individual basis. In fact, it's impossible. Federal agencies establish patterns and conduct investigations based on the types of calls reported. So even if you get a call and you don't fall for the scam and you're not a victim, the fact that you have a phone number, you have the type of scam that is involved, if you can report that either via the website or by calling the police department so we can pass this information along to federal agencies, they can enter that into a database. This is important because even at the federal level, these crimes are not investigated on an individual basis. The sheer volume of these types of calls makes it impossible to do so, combined with the fact that most of these calls are made across state lines, and in many cases, especially involving email, from overseas. So the strategy that's been adopted is at the larger level to track patterns and see if we can solve these crimes on a larger level rather than on an individual basis. We rely heavily on our federal partners and our local federal task force to help us with that. The police department strives to make residents and business owners aware of these types of crimes in order to prevent additional victims. Some of the efforts that we're working on include coordinating with San Bruno Cable to produce programming aimed at educating the public, and this is in progress, and we anticipate this programming to be out soon. Developing informational flyers to be posted and available at sites within the city, as well as on the city and department webpage. And we are coordinating with the Community Services Department to provide presentations here at the Senior Center, not only to seniors, but to anybody who's interested in protecting themselves regarding what to look for and how to be aware of these scams and not become a victim. That concludes my brief presentation regarding a subject that we could talk about for a long time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good. Any questions at this time for the Chief? I know in the last number of years with the rise of the internet and all of that stuff that goes along with this, a big proliferation of all of this happening. So it's important that people become aware, especially seniors, because they're targeted. So we really appreciate the report, Chief, and keep us posted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number five, review of the agenda. Anything on the agenda this evening? Item number 6, approval of the minutes of the regular City Council meeting of April 28, 2015. Any errors, corrections, omissions? Seeing none, they'll be approved as submitted. Item number 7, the consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implemented earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested by a council member or staff. Anything on the consent calendar?
Through the chair,
Ken?
pull 7C, please. C as in cat.
7C. Anything else?
If there's nothing else, I move to approve items A and B.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the consent calendar, items A and B. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 7C is adopt a resolution authorizing temporary closure of certain streets, including City Park Way, between Crystal Springs Road and DeSoto Way in connection with the 75th Annual Posey Parade on Sunday, June 7, 2015, between the hours of 11 a.m. and 5 p.m., and authorizing use of City Park ball fields and Police Department assistance with traffic control of 1,200 lineal feet of City Park Way between Crystal Springs Road and DeSoto Way for the Lions Club Annual Posey Parade. Ken?
Mr. Mayor, yes, you mentioned earlier when you announced the 75th Annual Posey Parade to be expanded this year, and it will be because not only will the streets be closed from Posey Park all the way to City Park, but also City Park Way is proposed to be closed from, I believe, 11 o'clock till 5 o'clock. So the Lions Club is proposing to move some of the activities towards the rec center and also provide a car show along that parking area of City Parkway. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of signage and plenty of warning for those residents that might possibly want to drive through the park and won't be able to that day. So thank you.
Through the chair, since you brought just about notification, how are we notifying and has that process? I know we need to have this action, but obviously the day is growing near, so I just want to give the residents around the area adequate notice.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Much along the process that we used when we closed City Parkway for the Centennial Carnival, we've informed residents within a 300-foot radius of the roadway of tonight's council action or pending action, and then depending on your determination, we'll send another set of letters out informing residents of your determination.
Thank you.
Action on 7C.
That I'd like to.
Through the chair, before you do that, is there a theme this year, or is it the Diamond Jubilee kind of thing?
It's a Diamond Jubilee. That's the theme.
Okay, thank you.
There are flyers and brochures throughout the community. Went to every school. There's in the library, I believe, City Hall, here at the Senior Center, and all city offices. So it's going to be very special for that princess to be selected for the 75th year. So get those youngsters out there and apply for the princess. Okay. Thank you. With that, I'd like to approve item C.
Second.
Motion is second to approve item 7C under the consent calendar. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Item number 8, public hearings. We have 2 public hearings this evening. The first one is A, to hold a public hearing, waive the first reading, and introduce an ordinance imposing a 1.652% rate increase for Recology San Bruno garbage and recycling services to be effective July 1st, 2015, as presented in the Notice of Proposed Garbage and Organic Program Rate Increase mailed to all property owners.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The city's franchise agreement with Recology San Bruno allows for annual rate adjustments. A detailed rate analysis is prepared every 3 years, with the next one being scheduled to begin in January of 2016 with an effective date of July 1st, 2016. An interim rate year analysis is done in the other years, and this is an interim, we are in an interim rate year right now. There was some confusion. I noticed that some people were asking, didn't we just get a rate increase in January? And it's true we did, but that was not part of the annual rate increase. That was an extension or a part of the organics program. So it was a way to phase in the organics increase. Before you this evening is a proposed rate increase for Recology San Bruno garbage and recycling services of 1.652%. And just to kind of explain to you how that calculation is done, the interim rate year increase is a conservative calculation that takes 80% of the change in the area consumer price index for December. And to give you a little bit of an explanation, the actual increase was a little over 2% in the CPI, but the conservative increase is only 1.652%. So this takes 80% of that and blends that with the percentage increase for certain authorized pass-through expenses that are per the franchise agreement. Based on the proposed rate adjustment, charges for the 20-gallon residential toter will increase by 36 cents, and a 32-gallon residential toter will increase by 46 cents. This increase would be effective for bills produced after July 1st. At the March 10th council meeting, staff presented the proposed rate increase to the council, and council directed staff to proceed with a notification to all property owners in accordance with the notice and protest provisions of Prop 218. The written notice was mailed to all property owners on March 23rd, which began the 45-day protest period. To date, we received 53 written responses, and we did receive several signatures today, and staff is still in the process of validating these, but we'll go ahead and count all of them, just to make sure that it's one per property owner or Recology account. Tonight, staff is recommending to hold a public hearing, waive the first reading, and introduce an ordinance imposing a 1.652% rate increase for Recology San Bruno garbage and recycling services to be effective July 1st, 2015. And I told her I wouldn't say her name because I don't want to say it wrong. So the general manager for Recology San Bruno is here tonight to assist us with any questions.
Good. Any questions for staff or for Recology at this time? All right, at this time we're going to open the public hearing. Would anyone like to address the council on this item? If we close the public hearing, you're going to be precluded from talking to us about this item going forward.
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second to close this public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Action by the council or discussion?
Through the chair.
Ken?
I appreciate what Angela was explaining as far as what this increase is. A lot of the protest letters are just all over the place as far as increases, even though it is 46 cents, but it is annual. It is every year. So I was hoping if Kirsten could maybe for those public members, those residents, those ratepayers, give us a little more explanation on why we have an annual increase and what does that constitute?
Well, our rate application is done by our controller every year, and like Angela mentioned, we're entitled to 80% of CPI, and that's to cover increased costs that go up throughout the year. Disposal costs will go up, expenses do go up, so it's just a kind of an overview general percentage that we're allowed to recoup annually every year. So next year will be our interim rate year where we'll look at our costs and revenue more closely and make and provide the city with a more detailed rate analysis at that time.
Just out of curiosity, has it ever gone down?
In my 10 years I've been there, we've never seen a negative CPI.
Okay.
No.
All right. So based on CPI, because we have a robust economy and things are doing well, costs are going to go up, and so okay.
Anything else?
I did want to mention, too, I spoke to Kirsten about some of the written responses, and she said that Recology had reached out to some of those individuals to offer the 20-gallon toters. They looked at the accounts, and so they have contacted some of those customers.
Through the chair.
Rico?
And that was my question, so thank you for taking it. I know the question was, you said that you reached out to some, because a lot of this that I read, and I read each one of them, was a matter that we are recycling, we have very little waste. Also, my understanding still is the state law is that you have to have weekly. You cannot forego that, so that's not something we have jurisdiction over or ability to waive. But those that you, and I'm sure you'll have this information, is there an opportunity for your office to see, do they have the 20-gallon, and if they do not, and they were saying about their waste being minimized, but yet the cost still goes up, that option can be offered?
Yes, so we are sent all of the protest letters from the city manager's office, and we'll receive the balance that I guess came in today. And we do reach out, we read each of them individually, and I do address some concerns that residents did have, and we do reach out to each of those customers to let them know the 20-gallon is available, and if they compost and are recycling, then they definitely could manage to go to the 20-gallon. So we do offer that to them, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just do the math here, it's the 20-gallon toter is $6.33 less
Correct.
each month. So that could be a significant savings for those people who can use a 20-gallon or don't even come close to filling up a 32.
Absolutely. The single individuals who compost and recycle at home definitely can manage in the 20-gallon. It is a 32 with an insert type of 20-gallon, and we do go over with them, do you compost, do you recycle, and if that all comes true, then we let them go ahead and try it, and they can always switch back if it's not working for them, or switch back in the summer if they have family visiting. So we do engage with them in a lengthy conversation when it comes to the 20.
Anything else?
Through the chair.
Michael?
Just one question. One of the letters that came in did mention that they had asked for a smaller gray bin and it wasn't available. So do you run out of those and you have to get more inserts, or are they generally available?
They're generally available, so we're not sure what happened with that individual. We have left him a voicemail the day before yesterday when we got them, and we haven't heard back because he also asked for a smaller green, and we did have some of those available. So I'm not sure where the disconnect happened, but we're working to resolve his issue.
Okay. And the smaller green ones, what size are those?
Those are 32.
32.
They're really meant for the individuals with the very narrow alleyways, I guess we call them, on the side of the house. So we try not to encourage those because they can fill up if you're doing the yard waste and the compost, but we do have them available. And for the elderly community that has trouble with the bigger ones, we want them to be able to compost, so we do have those available.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Action by the council?
To the chair, I'll introduce a resolution. Or
Waive the first reading.
I've been here before. Move to waive the first reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second to waive the first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce the ordinance.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Our second public hearing is to hold a public hearing, waive the first reading, and introduce an ordinance amending chapters 8.24, section 8.24.200 of the San Bruno Municipal Code relating to private sewer laterals.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The purpose of this item is to introduce an ordinance that's consistent with the City Council's new sewer lateral policy that it adopted by resolution on April 14. And let me just take a second and read that resolution to you. It's only 3 sentences long. What it says is, as of the effective date of this resolution, April 14, the city will continue to respond to requests for emergency sewer service from residents. Where a city-approved cleanout is accessible, operable, and will not damage city equipment, staff will provide ongoing maintenance services as necessary. In circumstances where the private lateral is damaged, staff will direct homeowners to repair or replace the private lateral at homeowner expense. So you'll recall from the last meeting when we talked about this that about 25% of homeowners do have a conforming cleanout. The other 75% do not. The new policy in this resolution, and that's reflected in the ordinance before you tonight, doesn't affect the 75% of homeowners that don't have an approved cleanout. They won't experience any change whatsoever in city service. As for the 25%, the city will still continue to respond to their private sewer lateral emergencies, and the city will also continue to provide ongoing maintenance services and advice about their private lateral. So those two things remain unchanged. The only change for those relatively few people is that if their private sewer lateral is damaged, it would be their responsibility to repair or replace it. Now, of course, if any work needs to be done in the city's right-of-way, for example, the city would issue an encroachment permit, as it has done before for similar repairs, and those conditions and specifications in the encroachment permit would protect
the city's interests in its streets and sidewalks and its infrastructure. You'll also recall that the city is now partnering with a warranty company to offer coverage for the repair and replacement of both upper and lower sewer laterals, regardless of whether there's a conforming cleanout or not. That program is voluntary, and residents may choose to sign up with that particular company, with a different company, or with no company at all. The ordinance in the staff packet that you have in front of you mirrors the resolution that you adopted on April 14. There was one minor correction. There was a typo in the resolution. We'll make sure it's fixed. It's the insertion of the word city-approved clean-out. Those words were left out of the resolution. But that's in the ordinance before you tonight. So if you do introduce the ordinance this evening, we'll bring back the adoption for you at a subsequent meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions, and if not, then to request that the mayor open the public hearing and take any testimony.
Okay. Any questions for Mark at this time? Ken?
I'm not sure about it, Mark, but I see Jim sitting close by. The city-approved clean-out now. I know that staff report has time and again stated that those that have installed the city-approved clean-out have had the advantage of possibly having a lower lateral repaired at city's expense. I question this 25% because, correct me if I'm wrong, it has been a requirement for any home improvement or specific type of home improvement to install a clean-out at the property line. So, and that's, in my experience, that has been a requirement, building department requirement, or a public works, public services requirement for many years. So, I guess my question is, what is now going to happen now? Are you going to require it still? Is the city going to require these cleanouts at during various projects, or as a condition of various projects? Now that it's more of it's more the advantageous for the property owner to install the cleanout versus the city really requiring a cleanout, if I'm making myself clear.
Well, let me defer to Jim on the technical question. I think that it has always been advantageous for the property owner to install a cleanout, both under the old policy and under the new policy. Certainly under the old policy, it was advantageous because they could get a significant amount of service at no cost to them. It's still advantageous under the new policy because then they'll continue to receive the maintenance services that the staff was providing. As for the number and the distribution, I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if Jim does or somebody else does.
I'm not sure I can answer your question, and because I think it's a plumbing code question, but it's to kind of dovetail to Mark's comments. When there's any work done, obviously the homeowner, the plumber, would probably recommend a clean out, then not have a clean out, and then to follow plumbing code, I'm sure they have to put the clean out in the proper location depending on their lot layout and so forth. So, but we have made no recommendations in any or any changes to the plumbing code or the clean out installation process at all.
So okay, so if it's safe to say that if it is not a plumbing code requirement, it's quite possible that a resident doesn't necessarily have to install a clean out at the property line.
If it's not according to plumbing code, then I don't know if I can answer your question.
I was just sort of digging whether or not it was a city policy, because it used to be a plumbing code requirement to have a clean out at the house, on the exterior of the house, and it's been my experience through the city of San Bruno that they want to clean out within a few feet of the property line, front property line.
You want access to the sewer line.
And that is not common in all cities.
We do know that people have put cleanouts and they aren't in the setback, so they aren't city approved, but there are cleanouts so that they can access their line.
So we can get the information for you. Unfortunately, the specific answer to the question about whether that is a requirement implemented by the city of San Bruno that is not otherwise captured in the plumbing code, we can review a little bit and get better information to you. The reason for installing a cleanout, in addition to what the city attorney mentioned earlier, has to do with the ability to access the sewer lateral. Anybody on any property needs to or is benefited by having the ability to readily access and attempt as necessary to clear, inspect, or otherwise manage the sewer lateral. And that's the reason for a requirement.
Any other questions of staff at this time before we open the public hearing? All right, this time we're going to open the public hearing. Would anyone from the public like to address us on this issue?
Harry Peterson. You may want to hold a vote on this until the next meeting so the city manager can get you the information that Councilman Ibarra asked for, and the city manager said they could get it, but it was not available now. I'd like to emphasize that a vote for this ordinance is a vote to deny a benefit the citizens have been enjoying since 1986 that the city provided and can remain in place simply by adjusting the amount per month. And a vote against this ordinance at this time would leave the benefit in place and give you the opportunity to consider in more depth the value of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Russ Steins Reed. So I don't have a proper clean out, and since Mark said this is only going to affect a small number of people, which I don't know where a small number of people is, 2,500 people, 2,500 residents, which is a quarter of San Bruno. So that's number one. I think that you just can't forget about the 25% of the people here that do have the proper cleanouts and that have had this going on. Number two, does anybody know how many cities actually put the sewer lateral on the residents from the property line into the street? I mean, is this common on the peninsula, or is this very uncommon on the peninsula? We do have, I do know from different people, we do have the second highest water rates on the peninsula, my understanding, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do see us constantly here raising stuff on the residents, and I ask the people here that work for the city, I don't know how many of you live here, but I wonder if you lived here and you had a piece of property here and you kept getting these rates that you guys keep giving to the residents, how you guys would actually feel being sitting in that chair instead of sitting in this chair over here. So I just ask you guys tonight to use your conscience for your vote, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? To staff, do we have any idea of the number of cities in the peninsula that have this ordinance that we have before us this evening? Similar? I know there are a number of them, but I don't have the count.
We presented last year to the council of what we call a white paper, where we did a study. It's been studied before, different agencies and what they've done. I know Daly City is one that we've talked to quite a bit about what they do with their sewer laterals, and their one, our program's kind of modeled after theirs. But different sewer agencies and also cities, it kind of runs the gamut. But in talking to the state, one of the things they said was that a lot of the agencies are trying to do this program where the laterals are costing them a lot of money and time, and they're trying to, focus on their mains and their main wastewater system. So it runs the gamut. I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but we had a pretty extensive report that we presented last spring to the council.
All right, thank you. Ken, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I stated, my research from and stated at the last meeting is that Redwood City has clearly stated that the lateral from the property line to the main in the street is the city's responsibility. I verified that after the last meeting, and it is clear. It is up to date. Just went down the line. San Carlos has a similar statement saying that city owns the lower lateral. Then I was very surprised to see that just last October or November that the city of Millbrae, who pretty much about the same time had their dealings with baykeepers, dealt with the sewer laterals, and did adopt an ordinance, but also to state that they are still responsible for the lower lateral, and that I believe it involved a clean out and an aggressive campaign to make sure that the residents help to maintain their laterals. So just in a brief research online, I found 3 significant cities in our county that have clearly stated that lower laterals are the city's responsibility and will maintain that.
Thank you. Through the chair. Michael?
I wanted to, I also looked into a lot of that stuff, and I actually looked a little deeper, and if you look at the way their code is set up, the cities that did take ownership of the lower laterals require, in most cases, not only a cleanup, but also a certification of the lower lateral before they'll take ownership. And for me, that was a big distinction in our program, the way it was set up, where we were just taking ownership regardless of the condition, whereas in a lot of these cases, before the city takes it on, they are certified. And I think that might be something that we could look into going forward. But I think that was an important piece that was missing from our program the way it was. So just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
Jim Evangelist, DeSoto Way. As far as us, our city having a different lower lateral program, it probably does have a unique program, but it's unique maybe in the Bay Area, but not throughout the country. There are many communities throughout the country who have been suffering under a cease and desist order like our city has for 20 years that don't give up the lower lateral maintenance because it puts them in greater jeopardy when they do that. So they take an aggressive view of the lower lateral to help control I&I, which is what we've been under a cease and desist order for 20 years for. So if you do vote this down or vote in the direction that staff advises, just bear in mind that it doesn't address the I&I chronic problem that we have in San Bruno.
Through the chair.
Michael?
I wanted to clarify our action tonight because I believe that last month when we voted, the vote we did last month was to repeal the ordinance that basically said that the city took ownership. The action today is only to implement the piece that says that we'll continue the maintenance, right? That's the only action?
That's correct. At the last meeting, you repealed the 1986 resolution and adopted a new resolution that has the same policy that's now in this ordinance before you tonight.
So if we were to not approve this ordinance, effectively what would we be doing? Basically saying that we're not doing maintenance?
Well, if you don't approve this tonight, you'll still have a resolution that you adopted at the meeting of April 14, which embodies the exact policy that's in this ordinance. So I think if you're inclined not to adopt the ordinance, you have to go back and start over and revisit that resolution, because all you'd have is a resolution that says one thing and an ordinance that says something different.
Okay, not exactly sure I follow. So, so the resolution says that
the resolution says that you're going to continue to provide emergency service for everybody. And it says that where there's a city-approved clean-out, then in those situations, you're going to continue to provide ongoing maintenance services. And then it says, with respect to anybody, if they have a lateral that's damaged or needs repair, it's the property owner's responsibility to repair or replace it.
Okay.
And that's what your resolution said last time, and that's what the ordinance says tonight.
Okay. So without this ordinance, then that resolution has no teeth.
Well, you still have a resolution,
Yep.
but you then would have an inconsistent ordinance on the books.
I see. Okay. I get it.
Anyone else?
Through the chair. Thank you. I want to address, somebody had said something about not taking a vote tonight and doing a further in-depth study. And I want to remind everyone, we've been looking at this for almost a year. Jim was saying that we started with a white paper last spring. So we have looked at this. The subcommittees met, I believe, three or four times. The council has received reports and met 4 times. 6 times, okay. I'm getting hand signals, 6 times. So this is in my memory, and this is my 20th year on the council, this is the longest we've ever studied anything. So I think we've done our due diligence on that. I also want to remind people, we're only changing one thing. So if you have emergencies, everyone has emergency services, period, end of statement. Ongoing maintenance, if you have maintenance now, you still get maintenance. That doesn't go away, that's not changing. The thing that's changing is the replacement or repair of lower sewer laterals. And only if you have a city-approved clean-out. So 75, 50, however many people don't have a city-approved clean-out, they don't get it anyway. So there's been a lot of things saying how many people are going to suffer from if we pass this, and on and on and on. And all we have to do is raise rates to maintain it, to maintain this program. We've talked about that. It would be, I believe, $9 a month per household to keep the program as it is, not add anybody, just to maintain it. So that's a lot of money. People were protesting adding 46 cents to the garbage rates. I think if we said we were going to add $9 to the sewer rates, we'd have many more than 53 or 57 protests. So I just want to bring those things up. And while I'm curious to get the answer to what Councilman Ibarra brought up, I'm curious, partly for my own thing. We did a major remodel on my house. We added 2 bathrooms, a whole second story, and there was no plumbing requirement to add a clean-out, a city-approved clean-out. So I'm curious to know what that program is. So anyway, but I don't think that has any effect on this per se. So having said all those things, I'd like to, let's see, do I introduce the resolution? No, it's an ordinance.
The public hearing is still open. So anything else? Would anyone else like to address the council on this issue? If we close the public hearing, you're precluded from talking to us about this.
Okay, I move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, any action by the council or discussion?
Through the
Michael?
chair, yeah, I do have a couple more questions, and it's a little bit off topic, but kind of looking at a bigger picture. I'm trying to remember, and I meant to go back, I just didn't have time to look at what we're doing more globally about laterals, any private laterals. And I don't know if any of the rate increases that we approved, if any of those funds are dedicated to replacing laterals, or does this action at this point pretty much end our commitment to doing anything with laterals? With or without cleanouts? Because I mean, we have a master plan that says here's what we're doing to improve the sewer system in the city, and I'm wondering. I was trying to remember. I couldn't remember off the top of my head, and like I said, I didn't have time to look it up. But I'm wondering, are there funds that are dedicated now to investing in laterals anywhere in the system?
So there will continue to be funds that come from the rates that are dedicated to the program that provides emergency response, as the Deputy Director and the City Attorney mentioned earlier, that we will continue to provide response to sewer lateral issues, and we will continue to provide the cleaning program that is the regular maintenance program. What we will not provide is simply the replacement repair of laterals that need to be rehabilitated, replaced, repaired. The only other, so those funds will continue to be part of our operational program. The other funds, and the only other ones that I can think of, and I'll ask Jim to provide any additional comment, are those that are dedicated to the program in the Sharp Park Basin. That is a condition of our agreement, our settlement agreement with the Big Heapers, having to do with a grant program to replace laterals in that specific neighborhood. As we've reported previously to the City Council, the grant fund amount, $1,700, is relatively low, relatively too low to incentivize widespread action within the neighborhood to take advantage of the program. So we're in the process right now of doing some videotaping and additional encouragement to residents in that neighborhood where that program is effective. Those funds are also programmed into our operations. Other than that, there are not specific funds that are dedicated to any ongoing programs to sewer laterals that I'm aware of.
Now, unless I'm
Jim's
mistaken,
agreeing.
when the main, there was a main that was replaced in the downtown area, and I can't remember the name of the street, but there were a number of laterals that were replaced as part of that while the ground was open. I believe the laterals were also replaced.
That is correct. Thank you for identifying that. In some cases where it is necessary to disrupt and interfere with the normal functioning of the sewer lateral, and it is determined to be necessary in order to further the completion of the main line project, and that has been the case in a few instances. In those cases, yes, the laterals are replaced as part of the project.
And so going forward, since we are going to do a lot of main-related work as part of the program that we're doing, there is a potential there that there could be other areas where we're possibly going to open up the ground and we'll need to do some work in the ground, and it'll be advantageous and it'll make sense to replace some laterals in those circumstances? Yeah,
and I guess the way I would describe it is where it is necessary in order to complete the city main line project in a cost-effective and efficient manner, that would be the criteria to evaluate whether the lateral then would also be replaced. Okay. And so it is possible.
Okay. And I&I was brought up as an issue, and going back and looking at the consent decree, it did talk a lot about I&I and how that continues to be an issue. So if we identified an area like the area that you mentioned where we're trying to encourage the residents to replace them, if we had other areas like that were clearly identified as being problem areas where there was a lot of I&I because of deteriorated laterals, it would make sense in that case for the city to take on a project where those could be addressed, and there's nothing that would prevent us from using the funds that are approved for our overall project to address that. Is that correct?
I believe that, Mr. Evangelist can clarify himself if necessary. I believe the comment and my understanding of the Big Heapers evaluation and the actual system situation is that the I&I problem exists in large measure primarily because of the deterioration of the main lines themselves, and that the work that is programmed is, I believe that Mr. Evangelist's comment indicated that the repair of, or rather that the big problem in the system is I&I, and that needs to be focused on, and in fact it is being focused on as part of the mainline replacement project.
Okay. Well, one thing that Mr. Evangelist did point out to me, it says in here that it says the Regional Water Board would consider the existence of such programs, especially those experiencing significant I&I from private sewer laterals, as an important factor when considering enforcement actions for sanitary sewer overflow. So that's right near the end of that. So it did seem like they did have a concern with the laterals, and so a concern I have, of course, is then if we were not actively doing anything other than the point of sale thing, which. And I don't think that specifically addresses I&I. It's going to address possibly clogs. We're going to video it, and if it looks clear, we'll certify it. But it's not necessarily going to certify that there is no I&I unless we're doing some sort of extensive testing, which I don't think is part of what our program includes.
Yeah, so again, regardless of, through whatever means we might become aware of I&I occurring in a lateral, that would be a result of damage or deterioration to that lateral, and that would become an item, certainly either that could be identified during a mainline project, it could be identified during our as part of a response to a property. In all of those cases, our effort would be diligently directed towards informing, advising, assisting the homeowner in taking care of the problem, requiring it if necessary. So the diligence associated with getting those done, basically what we're saying is that would become the responsibility of the property owner, not the city. Not that it wouldn't get done. In other words, it would still get done, and I think what I understand what the material or the regional board's information suggests. The result is what they're looking at is that there is a program in place to assure that private laterals and any other part of the system that is experiencing deterioration and the potential or the fact of I&I is addressed. Our efforts would be to see to it that the private property owner completed those necessary repairs.
And I guess the part that I'm missing is where we're actually doing anything to identify those areas.
You have some comment?
So the Sharp Park Basin, as you know, is the location where the sewer laterals, we have a supplemental environmental program that we have to complete, and I think in the subcommittee we talked about this at length. We worked with the water board to try to determine we're not getting a lot of participation, and we actually engaged in a conversation that went for several months about could we take a requirement that's in the Sharp Park Basin for lateral replacement and apply it elsewhere in the city where we might be able to replace laterals and get credit for it instead of in the Sharp Park Basin. So we discussed at length that idea because I&I is sort of this big global, we know we have I&I, where's it coming from? We don't have right now any knowledge of pockets of laterals or groups of laterals or subdivisions with laterals that have I&I problems except for Sharp Park Basin. We know that just because of the age and deterioration of laterals in general, we're going to have I&I. So we looked at that. How can we still do the program outside of Sharp Park, still get laterals replaced within the city and do good for the system, and we aren't able to determine groups that would qualify. So we've looked extensively. We think over time as we do more video inspection and we may get more data that will show I&I, that we can maybe target those, but because we haven't had much rain, it's really hard to do that. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but we've looked at the data we have so far, and we've tried to work with the water board to adjust the program so we could get credit because we don't want to have to write them a check at the end of the day. So,
if I could expand on your question to Jim, one of the things that I think the council member is looking for is what do you do in terms of your normal operations to identify the potential for I&I at a private lateral, and what do we do about it when we observe it?
Typically, the way we would find out about I&I is through video inspection. If there's a problem in the main, we may often investigate upstream to find out what's caused a blockage or what's caused an overflow if that's the case. And if there's video that's available that shows maybe a damaged lateral, we can sometimes see in the main line a broken piece or a lateral that's extended into the main that's causing a blockage in the main. We would notify the homeowner. We would work with them to come up with a possible solution. We oftentimes don't know if it's I&I. We can just tell that the lateral's old and maybe broken at the main, and we may work with them to investigate their lateral further. It's fairly rare that we're able to make that connection directly with I&I. It's usually to a damaged lateral.
So we've made a huge investment in the system that's monitoring everything, and I'm wondering, can't we do some sort of baselining, and then, I mean, do we have any wet weather flow that we could compare to dry weather flow that would tell us where, clearly a lot of water is getting into the sewer only because it's raining, that would kind of give us an idea of areas that do have bigger problems?
Sure, yeah, we actually have flow monitors that show us, have that data, track it over time. But again, it's not necessarily isolated to laterals, it's more sections of main. This section of main has got flow that it rises and falls maybe too much. It's obviously an indicator of I&I, but specifically where that I&I is coming from, because it could be coming at every 4 to 6 feet, every joint in that pipe could be getting water into it. We can't really identify it. We know that there's I&I. We try to identify there's not just one location. It's usually the whole entire length of the pipe it's compromised in some way. And that's where the CIP projects come in to go, that whole section's bad. We need to replace the whole section.
Okay.
And we have quite a few of those line segments that are on our list.
Okay. And then once those are replaced and we have clean mains, then if there is an increase in flow in that area, we would automatically assume it was laterals at that point.
And we have cameras, back to the data, we have cameras that we work with residents, and if there is a clean out, we can run a camera down the clean out to determine whether or not the lateral's compromised, and work with them on how to address that.
Okay. And just in your experience, in cases where there is a lot of I&I, is it visibly obvious always, or not always?
There's areas of town that have springs, so we have I&I even though it hasn't rained much. Mm-hmm. We can kind of tell with the video that there's water coming through cracks. But again, it's usually not one location. It's usually a whole entire section of a main line that's getting I&I. And if the whole main section's doing that, more than likely the laterals in that whole basin or that whole area associated with that main are also getting I&I. So it's a cumulative effect.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, through the chair.
The public hearing is closed. Perry, I'm sorry.
There was new information that was brought up. I believe mischaracterized the state board's view on a lateral program.
Well, then we'll address it to staff. Thank you. Ken, you had something?
Yeah, there's two things I want to really make a point on, is that I can appreciate that the subcommittee has reviewed this X amount of times and for X amount of years and everything, but just what the Vice Mayor and I have spoken of is that other cities have come up with programs. We've never been confronted with another option other than continuing maintenance. There's never been any discussion about increasing that fee from 60 cents to some other amount. There's never been any discussion about a partial program, maybe a conditional program that what was just spoken about as far as installing a clean out pending an inspection, to make sure that we, that we have laterals that are in good shape. We've just been requiring properties to install cleanouts. They can be installing cleanouts to bad laterals, both upper and lower. To me, I don't think we have a program. And to eliminate the city's involvement other than routine maintenance or emergency involvement is going to put all that onus on the property owner, of which no property owner to this time has any experience really in replacing a lower lateral. Everyone has experience of replacing an upper lateral. We don't even have data as to how many lower laterals in the residential areas have actually been repaired over time. We just know numbers. We're reacting to a budget. We're reacting to a rising rising amount of money that that the majority of this council and the staff doesn't want to pay anymore. So that's my problem, is that we haven't even investigated another program. We've gone from providing a service to the residents to not providing it anymore, and I just don't think that's right.
Anyone else? Someone said there was some new information that was addressed. I don't believe it's new. Michael, maybe you could speak on that briefly.
Well, I know there was some concerns about SSOs from the laterals that were reported. That I think there was a concern that the reporting of private lateral SSOs was what triggered a lot of the complaints. Was that the concern? Okay. So I think we've touched on that before in terms of what triggered the consent. One more question, if I may. So if we were to ask for this to be rewritten and take an opportunity to look at a program similar to what other cities are doing, and so that would be a program where the city would essentially take ownership of a lower lateral on the condition that it were properly tested for I&I, meaning that you would have to do some sort of pressure test on that portion of the lateral, that they put in an approved clean out, and I think those would be the conditions, so that we have an idea of what that would cost. And of course, we'd make some assumptions there on what the adoption rate for that. Is that something that would satisfy you guys?
It's definitely something to look at.
Okay.
Seriously look at.
Okay. So if we were to approve what's in front of us tonight, it's not going to preclude us from coming back and redoing this. I'm hoping it won't just go away and then never come back to us, because I think there is some interest in continuing some type of program. I still think that our program, the way it was implemented, was flawed, but I think that there are some opportunities to do something better. I'm confident that with the investments that we're making, we can address a lot of these issues. And I think there's an opportunity for us to take on some of that work like we've seen done in some of the neighborhoods where there is a clear need for a larger program, what we're trying to do up there in the basin. So I guess I'm looking from over here on the side. Are you guys looking for something to come back? Are you comfortable with what we have here? How would you like to proceed?
Well, my feeling is that what's in front of us tonight is nothing. It's just a confirmation of what's going to be provided. Ultimately, what staff and what the majority of this council is gearing towards is to dump it all on the resident, on the homeowner, on the property owner. So, and in case of emergency or in case of possibly asking for some maintenance, they'll come out if you have a clean out. If we are to be proactive in wanting to make sure that our deteriorating laterals, our deteriorating properties, do get upgraded, I think we should have an incentive program to let people know that we want them to put a clean out in because we want them to know the condition of their lateral. To throw out an insurance policy that I promise you there's going to be complaints once that first claim is filed. To think that there aren't a lot of lower lateral failures or whatever, as soon as that one lower lateral, fails and the city comes out and says, sorry, it's your responsibility now, all hell's going to break loose. I mean, this is not something that the community, that the residents are prepared to tackle. I mean, they know that they've got a stretch of sewer line on their property that they're responsible for. Now to start telling them that something's in the street is just, we have to help them. We have to do something and to educate them instead of just walking away.
I know the comment was just made that if this passes, we're dumping it on the residents. The majority of this city is already responsible personally for their whole line, from the house all the way out to the street. So what we're trying to do is make this system safer. And you said the majority of this council does not want to pay for it. No, I don't want to pay 7 figures when in fact we're bringing in thousands. It makes no sense to have everyone, or the 25 or 30% that have cleanouts, to subsidize everybody else. I don't think that's fair either. So this is a step, and we've discussed this many, many times. I don't think it's right or wrong. I think it's a step going forward that we have to address as part of maybe a comprehensive plan going forward. But we can't keep going back and looking at other ways to do things. A lot of other cities do the same thing as we're proposing this evening. Daly City, there you go, one of the major cities in San Mateo County, much larger than us, has a program similar to this. So as Michael said, I'm not against bringing something to augment this in the future, but I think we have to make the move, because this is just costing us a lot of money, and any more delay is going to cost us more money. So that takes the funds that could be used for these I&Is and all the other things we've talked about out of our hands. It's going into repair and replacement of things that should be a homeowner's responsibility. Really should be. So that's my 25 cents or 60 cents. So, there you go. Is there any more discussion on this?
And you're part of the 25%, so.
I am part of the 25%. Right, okay. Exactly.
So to reiterate something I said earlier, the programs that I looked at, Redwood City and South San Francisco, I believe, their programs, they take ownership of the lower laterals only after the inspection, but it still puts the burden of having maintenance-worthy lateral on the homeowner. So it doesn't really change that much. So if we were to come back with something like that, would that be agreeable to you guys?
I think, as the mayor said, to come back and augment something, I think is good. I understand how it's going to go, and I get that. And I understand the reasons on both sides when my colleagues have that. But just to vote it and say, let's now put it on the shelf, I think it's worth, I think we owe it, and I think we should. Okay. And so if something can come back, I think that it should.
Okay.
Okay. Any more discussion? Action by the council?
I'll introduce the ordinance.
I think you have to waive the first reading.
Sorry. Waive the first reading.
It's already been read.
That's true. I did actually read it out loud, didn't I? But go ahead.
Is there a second to waive the first reading?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second to waive the first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Would someone like to introduce the ordinance?
I will introduce the ordinance.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
No.
Councilmember Ibarra.
No.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
Through the chair. So in terms of a follow-up action, do you guys want to request that something go back to the subcommittee? Do you want to see something from staff? How do we proceed?
Yes, I'd like some of the questions that were asked being answered, be brought forward as far as what other cities and agencies offer, how we can have a proactive approach to some lateral. And I think that's the thing, is that we do want to make a difference. We want to have the issues that we had go away, but at the same time, we have to be engaged and involved. And I think that has to be part of the process. So I would like to see what other, I know both council members had done some homework. I'm willing to do some homework and offer some of the information I may have, that I can assess or learn. But at the same time, yes, I'd like to see staff come back with some of the questions that the city manager was writing down today as a first step, and some of the other questions that the colleagues had.
Okay. And can we bring that back in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, or in 2 meetings from now? Okay.
Okay, so the staff is going to come back with how to firm up the responsibility or non-responsibility of the homeowner regarding the lateral program that we have.
Well, let me tell you what I wrote down and make sure that that's consistent with what the City Council is interested in. First is, what do other cities do? We can certainly conduct a more detailed evaluation of the 20 cities in San Mateo County. I assume that would be sufficient for the City Council's interest. And then secondly, some information and strategies to make our program as proactive as possible, to be more clear about how we are providing a proactive program or what we might do differently or more to provide a proactive program as it relates to the potential for sewer lateral I&I think is the bottom line. Is that correct?
And if I can add, I realize not all 20 cities have a cease and desist order, or do they?
A lot of them do.
Yeah.
And
we'd like, I'd like to get an idea of how, maybe on this topic, on, private laterals, private properties, how have they addressed it? How have they addressed it? And then possibly go into, how they've developed those programs. Because like I said, Millbrae was right there, and they were right on topic, and they developed their program.
And I know we've talked about incentivizing, and we've tried one area. You went up there and spoke to the community. Folks went out there door to door. Staff did, to spend the time. So, and it's offering $1,700, if my memory is correct. And obviously that's not really working. So let's talk about what can work and what will work. I brought up times and times, and maybe we don't have, San Mateo is a larger city, but the program that they offer. Every time they offer it, you have a lot of folks that come out to take opportunity to it, and they do it quickly because it runs out before the year is up. So, in essence, they're doing something that they began a long time ago, and really people do go out of their way, and they do it quickly because that money runs out every year that that council budgets for it.
Okay.
I think another interesting data point would also be whether those cities are doing anything as part of if they have a master plan, if they're addressing private laterals in that, or in their capital improvement.
So just to be clear, we have an item scheduled for your next meeting on May 26th that would take the second action on the ordinance, for approval of the ordinance. This work effort is too ambitious to do it well enough to satisfy, I think, the numbers of questions that the council has raised about what other cities are doing. Is a little bit ambitious for us to be able to promise we can report back on the 26th. So we would expect to bring that back on the 9th of June, which is your meeting, 2 meetings from now.
Okay. All right.
That works for me.
Okay. All right, good. We done with laterals?
Yes.
All right. Item number 9, public comment on items not on this agenda. It is the council policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and interaction. Where appropriate, the Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Would you like to address the council under public comment?
Robert Rico, as your representative on the Mosquito District, I got the following information this afternoon from the Dr. Cindy Peavy, the district manager. The district has detected West Nile virus in another bird. This was in Redwood City. This is fairly routine. We have several positive birds every year. The district will be trapping mosquitoes and testing them next. There are not currently any plans to fog, and we are not currently doing a press release on this since it's not the first bird of the season. If the mosquitoes test positive, we will assess the situation and determine whether we will fog for adult mosquitoes. We will update you when we get the mosquito results. And the district goes on to remind everybody, even though that or in a drought, dump all standing water. Report freshly killed, not run over birds and squirrels to 1-877 WNV-BIRD. Additional questions can be obtained by calling the district at 344-8592.
Thank you. Anyone else under public comment?
Russ Steins, Reed. I'd just like to say, this being the third year of our 10% raises on our water and sewer, for our new water and sewer system, I wonder how far along we've actually gotten with any of the system, how much we've actually done. Is this something that's going to be repetitive when the 5 years are up? Are you going to come back 5 years from now and the city's going to say, oh, well, we got 3% of this done, but we need to do 97% more. We need another 5 raises at 10% a year. How long does this continue? How long does this go on before actually we see somebody say, okay, well, we've got this much done, and this is how much we've spent of your guys' money? Thank you.
All right, thank you. You can follow up on that. Anyone else? All right, under item 10, conduct of business, we have 2 items. The first is to receive a quarterly financial report as of March 31st, 2015 for the 2014-15 General Fund, Special Revenue Funds, Enterprise Funds, and Internal Service Funds budget, and adopt a resolution approving the third quarter budget amendment, fiscal year 2014-15, General Fund, Self-Insurance Fund, Wastewater Fund, and Water Fund budgets.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. The city's third quarter budget report is prepared in order to compare the revenues and expenditures in the first 9 months of the current year with both the budget and the first 9 months of the previous year. In addition, as part of the third quarter process, the budget is reviewed to determine if any adjustments should be proposed in this report. And staff is recommending several adjustments, and I will be covering them as I go through the presentation. Also, I understand that this is a fairly new process for the city. But it's being done to keep the budget more on track, keep it more accurate, so that at the end of the year we don't have line items that are actually over budget. So with that, I'll start. Overall, general fund revenues are on track at 67% of budget, and that is approximately $1.6 million higher in the prior year. And I apologize, I believe the staff report said 1.7. Maybe I was hopeful, but it was 1.6. Property tax is up by 9% when compared to the prior year, and it is at 65% of the current budget, with an increase of approximately $414,000 compared to the prior year. Once we book the April distribution, that revenue source is at 86% of the budget. Sales tax is up at 8% when compared to the prior year, and with only 7 months of revenue, this is on track at 56% of the budget. Staff has been notified that approximately $182,000 in lieu sales tax or triple flip is being withheld due to the recalculation of the prior ERAF reimbursements. The state has included this repayment of the triple flip in their proposed 15-16 budget, so we're hopeful that we will get that in time to actually record it into the current year during the audit process. Business tax is currently at 79% of budget compared to 106% in the prior year. Revenues are slightly higher than the prior year by about $75,000, and the city receives the majority of the property tax at the beginning of the fiscal year, and that explains why it's over the 75%. However, this revenue should be closer to 88%. There still is the airport tax that we have 2 quarters left, so we know that we should be receiving around another $360-something thousand. So as I mentioned at mid-year when I did my report, I would continue to monitor this revenue source to determine if an adjustment needed to be made at this quarter. And at this time, I am recommending a decrease of $300,000 in this line item to actually reflect the revenue that we are projecting. Hotel motel tax, this revenue is showing a 12% increase over the prior year, with only 8 months of revenue being received. Staff is recommending that this revenue source be increased by $300,000 in order to reflect the anticipated revenue that we will receive. On departmental revenues, overall departmental revenues are on track at about 72% of budget. Staff is requesting a a couple of budget increases in these line items. For the police revenue, we're asking for an increase in $9,265, and this was a donation that we received for the police canine, so we just want to adjust the budget to reflect the donation that we've already received. And then $200,000 in building revenue, and this again is something that if you look on the quarter report, you see that we actually have received quite a bit more than we budgeted. For general fund expenditures are at 27, our budget is at 27 million or 71% of budget. This shows that departments are monitoring their expenditures and staying within their budget. However, staff is again recommending some adjustments in order to avoid certain departments from going over budget. Again, we're asking for an increase in appropriations of the $9,265 for the police canines. Since they have already purchased that, it has caused their line item to go over budget. In the building department, we're asking for an increase of $100,000 for professional services. In planning department, we're asking for an increase of $50,000 for professional services and $50,000 for personnel services. And this increase is due to the increase in development activity, and we've had to use additional consultants and personnel staffing. When the water fund revenues are down approximately $200,000 less than prior year, and this can be attributed to a ongoing decrease in consumption, which should be anticipated due to the drought, so water conservation efforts. For the wastewater fund, revenues at third quarter were approximately $10.7 million compared to $10 million in the prior year. And this increase is again due to the 9 months of rate increases that were approved in the 5-year rate adjustment. Cable television, actual revenues were slightly lower than the prior year by about $68,000. However, expenditures are $298,000 higher than prior year and are currently outpacing revenues by $483,000. The self-insurance fund, this fund is at 75% budget mark. However, staff again is requesting an increase in this line item also, or this fund. Additional appropriation of $672,000 is being requested to fund anticipated claims and an increase in premium costs, and these were previously approved by the City Council. This increase will be allocated across the 3 different funds: the general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund. And just I wanted to give you a quick overview on this schedule. You'll see that we are asking the net increase is the $460 that would be for the self-insurance. The other revenues and expenditures actually net out to zero. So the only increase to the general fund would be the amount to fund the self-insurance fund for the workers' comp and the general liability costs. And here we see the self-insurance fund. So the revenue would increase because the departments would transfer that money into the revenue, and then the expenditures and the workers' comp claim are for some pending, like I said, anticipated claims, and then general liability is just some premium increases. And here is the wastewater fund and the water fund's amount for that same allocation. And with that, that concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Any questions for Angela? Ken?
I'm very predictable as far as dealing with your predecessors. This is all good news, isn't it?
Yes.
This is all, and why don't you come out and say things are, I mean, I used to hit
things are
O'Leary
great.
and say, come on, man, we came out of a recession and things are, you know, very cautious. So I realize that, there was conditions on some of the funds, triple flip, I still don't understand that, but for the resident, for the business owner or whatever, what is your look at the forecast as we go through the summer and then approach a holiday season with the economy, the San Bruno economy?
Well, you're asking me mid-budget preparation time, so we've actually been looking at this very closely and evaluating all of the revenues. And right now we're projecting an overall increase in general fund revenues in 15-16 of about 6%. So doing very well.
Okay. Anyone else?
Quick, I think the adjustments that we're doing, I appreciate that, to keep it current. Obviously, in the building, there is the $200,000 of increase. There's going to be $200,000 of professional services, and that's a wash. So are we perceiving that there will still be some possible additional revenues that will come in the last quarter?
In building,
yes.
In building, yes. There are some revenues that we get. We have some projects that are out that should be pulling permits pretty soon. So, yes, we anticipate that those will be going forward.
Okay. That's it for now.
Okay. Anyone else? Action by the council?
Move to adopt.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye. No, we're adopting.
The third quarter.
Approving
Third quarter.
And the adjustments.
Carries our resolution.
Okay.
Adjustments.
Are you okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Second item is adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Stantec for design services for the Lower San Bruno Avenue Medians project in an amount not to exceed $83,946 and appropriating $42,500 from gas tax and $42,500 from Measure A funds.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Will Anderson, Staff Engineer, Public Services Department. San Bruno Avenue is a major arterial street that connects residential areas and employment centers such as Walmart and YouTube with nearby retail centers such as Bay Hill Shopping Center and businesses on Camino Plaza and along El Camino Real. San Bruno Avenue also serves as a direct route to the transit corridor area. The Capital Improvement Program contains the Street Medians and Grand Boulevard Improvements Project, which via 4 previous projects has rehabilitated medians along the upper portion of San Bruno Avenue between Skyline Boulevard and I-280, the entire length of El Camino Real, and 1 median on San Bruno Avenue from El Camino Real to Elm Avenue. The City Council should be recognized for establishing the overall program that has had great visible impact to both residents and visitors alike, as well as reducing the amount of irrigation water used. We now have an opportunity to put one more piece of the puzzle in place. The Lower San Bruno Avenue Medians Project is a continuation of the overall program and will rehabilitate medians and upgrade pedestrian access along San Bruno Avenue from Elm Avenue to I-280. Similar to previous projects, the city has secured grant funding to be used for construction. The grant amount for this phase is $735,000. The cost to the city will include local match funding for construction in an amount of about $95,000 and covering the cost for design. Over the course of the program, and including the current $735,000 grant, the city has received over $2.5 million in grant funds for median upgrades. Project scope for the Lower San Bruno Avenue portion includes re-landscape medians with more drought-resistant plants, replacing spray irrigation with drip irrigation to conserve water, and replacing hardscape paver blocks. This landscaping work was designed as part of the overall master plan for the corridor, and the plans that were previously prepared will be incorporated into the bid documents. But what's new are improvements to create a more pedestrian-friendly environment. The proposed contract with Stantec will address design issues such as new curb ramps and speed radar display signs. A feasibility study will also be prepared to determine the feasibility of installing other pedestrian improvements such as refuge islands at the medians, installing advanced warning pedestrian crossing signs, and modifying traffic signals to account for slower pedestrian walking speeds, and adding dedicated left turn signals to reduce conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles. The designer's work will also include preparing plans and specs for the final scope of work and providing technical assistance during bidding and construction. City staff chose Stantec through a request for proposals process that included sending the RFP to civil and traffic engineering firms in the city's database and also advertising on the city website. 4 proposals were received, and based on staff evaluations, Stantec was determined to be the most technically qualified firm. For funding, the current CIP has a design appropriation of $30,000. Because the proposed contract is for approximately $84,000, staff is recommending that council appropriate an additional $85,000 into this project, evenly split between gas tax and Measure A funds to cover the cost of the design and city staff costs for project management. Next year's CIP will include the grant funding and the city local match funds for construction. To meet grant fund deadlines, a construction contract has to be awarded before July 2016, and we anticipate construction to start in the summer of 2016 and be complete by the fall. So in conclusion, staff recommends council authorize the city manager to execute the contract for design services with Stantec. That's my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff at this time? Ken?
Yeah. I served on a subcommittee with former Mayor Franzella, and we reviewed pretty much all the approved median strips that you spoke of, San Bruno Avenue and El Camino. We worked with Calendar Associates, a well-renowned landscape architect. I was surprised to see that now we're dealing with engineers, civil engineers. I understand that we've got some quirks in our medians and things, and through the experience running with Calendar Associates, we found out that why certain things were done over the years, and we've mitigated that. Now we've got a new consultant, new designer. One, was Calendar in the running? And 2, what are we doing as far as landscaping? I mean, is that going to be now farmed out to a landscape architect? And 3, I mean, are these medians now going to look, I know they're going to look different because now we're looking at pedestrian amenities and things, which none of the other medians have. So we're as much as I love, want to finish this up and redo all these medians, we're sort of changing direction now. And how can you speak to that?
The landscape design is prepared by Calendar. What we are adding to the mix are the pedestrian improvements, such as the access ramps and possible modifications to the traffic signals, but the landscape was actually included in the previous median phase projects, so we did not have the funding available to construct all of that, so we rolled over that design into this project. So the landscape irrigation plans and specs are prepared by Calendar Associates.
And I would just mention, you probably remember that during that time that you and former Mayor Franzella were working on this, the intent was to create a uniform appearance, and in particular on San Bruno Avenue, to transition from the design aesthetic that is present above 280 along San Bruno Avenue, to use the portion below from 280 to El Camino to transition from that more formal appearance and feel of the landscape treatment to the more formal that is in place along El Camino. One island has been completed, and the design aesthetic, the landscape treatment previously designed by Calendar and that will be used in this project continues that same aesthetic as is currently in place in that first median above El Camino. So the only real addition or the only real change is to make sure that we have all of the civil engineering requirements met in the design, and also to address some improvements to make that corridor more pedestrian and frankly traffic friendly, to really improve the overall circulation in that corridor.
And if I could just follow up, yes, you do have one median strip, and I mentioned this to Ray, from El Camino to Elm, and that aesthetic isn't looking good right now. There's weeds popping up all over through the paving. So I would hope that we could set an example saying that we're going to maintain them, and then with the new ones coming in. And then I also asked Ray, what about the median that's under 280? I mean, are we allowed to do anything there? It's got the hideous old lava rock, red lava rock in there. And I realize that possibly nothing can grow, but I'd like that to be addressed if we could, because it's obviously not part of the scope here.
Councilman Barr, we certainly will take a look at that and see what kind of coordination is required. As you said, it's under the freeway, so it's difficult to make it as nice as the other medians, but we will take a look at that. We're also looking at that area across from it, and that triangular shape that SFPUC had. So we're coordinating that with Caltrans and SFPUC, and while we're doing that, we would address the area under the freeway. But this is an area that I personally walk a lot, and I'm very concerned about the pedestrians. Cars coming out from the off-ramp, and this is a downhill, and the speeding is an issue. And want to make sure that because of the Bay Hill area, the pedestrian activity there is protected and as safe as possible. So this project it's an excellent project for that, and we're hoping that it will be a very, very positive impact on that whole area in terms of pedestrian access and movement.
Through Chair, and I know it's an ongoing project, but just wanted to remind that I hope that we're still working with our parks staff as far as what is the most effective and efficient for them, so they, as far as staff costs and time that it takes for maintenance, for safety. Obviously, they're the ones that are out there every day. They know best too. So I hope that we're using them as a resource, as I hope we have through this whole project, as far as what works best. And then, obviously, I hope that whatever we're putting in, we look at it as cost effectiveness, and we don't have a median that has weeds, because what's worse is investing and then not keeping it up. So whatever we put in, let's make sure we can maintain, and we have the staff and whatever best avenues we have for their efficiency.
Anyone else? Action by the council?
I'd like to adopt the resolution.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 11, report of commissions, boards, and committees. There aren't any this evening. Item 12, comments from council members.
Through the chair.
Ken?
Mr. Mayor, I look back, and on October 22nd, 2013, I requested the TSPC, Traffic Safety and Parking Committee, look at parking along North San Mateo Avenue, specifically the parking along businesses of north of San Bruno Avenue. I'm not aware of anything that's been undertaken by that committee. So I'd like to restate that, and additionally, I would like TSPC to plan in the near future to, and staff to consider looking at studying parking along Herman Street, because I know there's been some complaints about parking there. And then also to revisit the tight parking in the first couple blocks of Genevin, possibly timed parking, limited parking on Genevin, where the Wendy's and Speedy Spot, those first two blocks. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Through the chair.
Irene?
Thank you. I'd like to give a thank you to a lot of people for their participation and setting up of Operation Clean Sweep that we had last Saturday, May 2nd. The council was there, and I thank you all for your help. Staff did a fabulous job setting everything up and helping us out. and then the volunteers from not just San Bruno, but a lot of people came from all over the peninsula and had a great time. So we cleaned things, we planted things, we painted things. I'd like to especially thank the kids from Cappuccino High School that came and painted the bridge in San Bruno Parks. That was a wonderful thing. Rotary had a team that went on San Mateo Avenue that was part of it was closed off, and they did plantings and cleaning up of the Centennial Plaza. And Lions, I know, painted Beckner Shelter and did a fabulous job there too. So thank you, everybody. I'll have facts and figures next time about how much garbage we picked up and whatever else we did.
Great. Anyone else? Okay. Item 13, closed session. We did not have a closed session this evening, before or after. Wow. Okay. Item 14. We're adjourned until the next council meeting right here, May 26th. Everyone have a very safe Memorial Day.